Hello, everybody, and yeah, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Politics, Culture, and Some Other Shit with me, Andy McGippon, your host, I guess. Yeah, good. Okay, let's get to it. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the Boyne Bridge and Boann. Do you know about Boann, the goddess Boann, and why the River Boyne? And it's a derivation of the original Irish uh, name from the Irish language, as you know, every place name in Ireland that is spoken in English is a bastardization or derivation, some would say, of the more beautiful and more meaningful Irish original. We'll talk about that because the Boyne Bridge in Belfast, with the new transport hub that's been built, is going to come down by the look of it, and yeah, some people aren't happy. I don't blame them, but probably for different reasons. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk of an article to read you from The Guardian from a few weeks ago. I meant to read it a couple of times, but I just never got around to it. And then a little bit about Gaza. And then Armagh and Donegal playing the Ulster final. We're going to talk about that as well. So, yeah, let's get to it. Before I do, bump. Let's do gigs. Where is the thing? There. Bonneville's gigs. Well, we've got this one coming up in Finland. Ooh, why's it going all funny? I'm already fucked. Okay, so thanks to everybody that came to see us in Kilkenny at the weekend at the Kilkenny Roots Festival. It was fantastic. Especially thanks to Willie Byrne from Billy Byrne's Bar. Looked after us so well. So much hospitality. It was unreal. This Saturday we're playing the Deer's Head as a part of the Cathedral Quarter Arts Festival, 1 o'clock. All ages gig. Under 12s go for free. In the Deer's Head. Yep. And then the week after that, Mandy Bingham is playing here at the house at Jack Cole. Come down to that. There's a few tickets left. I'll be supporting Mandy and Graham. And then on the 1st of June, we go to Finland to play Mrs. Rooster Festival. And we're really looking forward to seeing our buddies Kettle. We haven't seen them in ages. And then it looks like we're going to be going to Route Oak this year again, but as guests for a special reason. I'll reveal why closer to the time. So there we go. Boom. Let's get to it. Theme tune down. Boom. We're done. Okay. Let's go. So, just make sure I've got this all teed up. So, for those of you that aren't from Belfast, you probably don't know. But if you are from Belfast, you probably do. So let's get to it. TransLink are busily finishing a brand new Belfast transport hub. You can see there on the screen the picture. By the way, forgot to do the thing. Don't forget to join me if you want to over on Patreon for £1 a month. I've only got one tier. Excuse me. Helps me keep the lights on here at Super 8 Ecotronic. And those of you that signed up last week, I'm getting a few sign-ups, more than a few, every week. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And for those of you that don't want to do the Patreon, I understand everyone's asking you to do Patreon. You can see the link on the screen there, or the picture on the screen. Buy me a coffee, where you can just throw a couple of bucks into the hat. That's all. It's a one-time thing. You can do that if you want, and it would be great. And if you don't want, that's fine too. I understand. We're living in hard times. If you would share, it would be great. I would appreciate that. That would be fantastic. And for those of you that are listening, you can go and watch this. There's a video on the Patreon. I upload the video to Patreon, exclusively to Patreon. Means if you don't have a YouTube account, you can watch the whole video without ads, you see. So that's a wee bonus for you if you do the Patreon thing. And if you want to, and you can also download directly, again, from Patreon, the audio file means that you don't have to endure the adverts. So you do get something for your money that isn't available to the unwashed masses. So there we go. And the videos and the all, obviously you can get them at all the usual platforms, and the videos uploaded to YouTube. So here we go. So you can see a picture there on the screen of the entrance to the Great Northern Mall. That's a laughably, that's a laughable name of a thing, but whatever. Imagine being an American walking past that and thinking that there's going to be that whole building that's above it is part of a mall. It's not. It's fucking next door to the Europa Hotel, and you go in there and you got people. You got two guys selling phone cases and a barber shop. But anyway, it leads you through to Great Victoria Station, which is 2 platforms. Well, they're closing that down, and they built a brand new, big, modern thing incorporating the bus station, which this one did as well. So I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I've got no opinion on it. I don't know. I don't go to Belfast often enough to garner an opinion. But the reason that I'm bringing it to your attention, is because my favourite organisation in the world, not the Orange Order. The headline in the Belfast Telegraph is Belfast Orange Order objects to the redevelopment plans on land near the Boyne Bridge and Great Victoria Street Station. So, I'll read the article for you very briefly. The Orange Order in Belfast is among the objectors to a plan to revamp land. This is from 2022, by the way, close to the city's main public transport station. And I should mention that because it's built, it's done, but the bridge hasn't come down yet. They're talking about taking the bridge down, the Boyne Bridge. The Weavers Cross regeneration plan was described as bleak at a City Hall meeting this week. During a special meeting of Belfast City Council Planning Committee, elected representatives attended a predetermination hearing on the plan, with the case being put forward by objectors and supporters. Councillors were not asked at this stage to approve or reject the project, which is still in the early stages. Okay, so we'll get forward. The proposals are described by the applicant, the government-owned Northern Ireland Transport Holding Company, as being a transport-led regeneration with a focus on placemaking and public realm environmental sustainability and delivering economic and social value. So all the corporate buzzwords that you expect to hear. What a load of shit. At the last meeting on the application, the council had received 6 letters of support and 120 objections. The majority of the objections relate to the removal of the Boyne Bridge, an introduction of the new pedestrian crosses associated with the Belfast public transport hub, which has already been approved. Just before this week's hearing at City Hall, a further letter of objection was received by the council from the County Grand Orange Lodge of Belfast, as well as letters of support from Northern Ireland Hotels Federation, the Belfast City Centre Management Company, and a withdrawal of previous objection from Donaldson Planning, who act on behalf of the multi-storey car park at Grosvenor Road. So that's all wonky stuff. Of course, the Orange Order being the kingmakers previously, not currently, in the north of Ireland. Whenever they say or do anything, it gets amplified in the media. So we'll skip forward a bit. Let me just find. When we get to the objections, we know what the builders are going to say. It's going to all the wonky stuff. And it's called Weavers Cross. Here it is. Will deliver economic considerable economic benefit to Northern Ireland and Belfast. 1 billion additional spend to the economy. How they measure that, I don't know. But the original bridge at the site is believed to have been built. So they're talking that the take down a bridge was originally believed to have been built in 1611 over what was known as the Blackstaff River. Was replaced in 1642 by the Great Bridge of Belfast, later known as the Salt Water Bridge. King William of Orange is said to have crossed the old bridge in June 1690 on his way to the Boyne, which is why it's called the Boyne Bridge. So isn't that pathetic? The modern Boyne Bridge was constructed in the 1930s around the remains of the previous crossings. So now, we know that the Orange Order is opposed to the development of Great Victoria Street Station and the demolition of the Boyne Bridge. But the reason that they're opposed to it is because because of the names, the significance, the cultural significance to the orange and what they're called. They're not opposed to it on any other for any other reasons other than those names are going to be replaced. So the new place is going to be called Weaver's Cross, which isn't Great Victoria Street Station. The bridge is going to come down. I don't know what's going to go in its place, but it's not going to be called the Boyne Bridge. The bridge doesn't cross the Boyne. King William of Orange, on his way to the Boyne, is said to have crossed the bridge. So it gets called the Boyne Bridge. Excuse me. Took a little drink of water there and spilled some of it down my chest. So those reasons for me are not great, but you know what, you wouldn't expect anything less from the orange. So let's get to the transport hub is due to be open soon. I think it's a couple of months, 2 months away from being open. To just finishing off the final, the links, the pedestrian links and things, and it's ready to go. I'm looking forward to seeing it. It looks rather impressive when you pass it on the train. I'm sure it'll be great. The current place is rather tatty and it's aged looking. As we know, all modern architecture tends to age rather quickly, which, you build a hospital 100 years ago and you expect it to last for 100 years, and you build a hospital today and you got to knock it down and start again 20 years. But regardless, the march of progress marches on. So this is the point. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. The Boyne itself and the name. I love Irish place names. There's so much in them. You've heard me talk about this on this podcast many times, I'm sure. Even Lurgan, which hasn't got the best of reputations, to be fair. But even the name of it is, Lurgan, and Lurgan means a long ridge or shin. And if you know Lurgan, you know the topography of the area. Coming from the town centre right down to the loch shore, there's a ridge, and that's where it gets its name from, on Lurgan. And then the Anglification of on Lurgan was Lurgan. So what happened was a couple of cartographers on at the behest of the King of England came here once the colonialisation was complete in the 1700s, and set about mapping the place. And in order to map the place, they have to give everywhere a place name, and they obviously can't use the place name of the native language, because they don't speak the native language, so they change it. So you say, well, what they do is they take on Lurgan, and that becomes Lurgan, right? They take the river Boyne, and which is named in the Gaelic Boann, after the goddess Boann, and it becomes Boyne because it's more friendly to the Sassenach tongue. But it's also an act of cultural vandalism, also, because we know that the empire is determined to attack culture itself, language itself, as well as the individual, as well as the people. Separate us from our culture, then we become easily dominated, then we become English. Little Englishmen. Isn't that one of the things that Winston Churchill said? One of the things about the Irish is that they refuse to be English. So that's a part of. I told you this before in the podcast. One of my bugbears, one of my favorite, one of my when I think about the place names of Ireland being Anglified, my favorite place is uh, oh Christ, what's it called? Oh God, the names escape me just as I want to tell you. Um, South Armagh, Christ, I can't believe I forgot. It'll come to me in a minute. It will come. It'll come back. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm gonna fucking Google it. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it. It will come to me. It'll come to me in a second. Um, but the place names and the Anglification of the place names in this town that I'm trying to think of, I just can't right now, is a perfect example of how the place name in the native Gaelic is is a map. It is a cartography. You say the name of the place, and you get a cartography of if you're so say you're a stranger and you're going from here to there. It's you go through the valley, you go to the field, you go to the lake, you go to the, and that's what the place names all are. But when you change them from the Irish to the English, they lose all their meaning. There's no meaning behind them, so they lose all their significance. You know what I mean? Actual, and even beyond cultural significance, they lose all their practical significance because it is a map. You're giving someone a map when you're telling them how to go from A to B. So, oh God, it's going to torture me. I'm going to have to Google this. South Armagh towns. Where are they? Fork Hill. Jesus Christ. Can't believe I forgot that. Fork Hill. That's the one. Fork Hill. The town's called Fork Hill. Fork Hill. Forkhill. Fork Hill is a derivation of the Irish word on forkle. Force I think that's it. On forkle. On forkle means trough. So the English cartographers took the word of the village, the word of the place, in the Gaelic, forkle, and changed it to the English friendly Fork Hill. Right? And in the so doing, you literally lose any meaning behind the word. In Fork Hill, the town called Fork, the village called Fork Hill that we know in South Armagh on the way down to Crossmaglen, there's no fork and there's no hill. Not where the people live, because the word means trough or valley. The village sits in a valley on a river, right? So the original word means valley. Or so if you're saying to someone, this is how you get from here to there, and you're saying to go through Fork Hill, you're telling them to go through the valley. So therefore it has a practical use. When you change it to the English version, it becomes Fork Hill. There's no fork and there's no hill. Do you get it? Do you see what I mean? So that's a part of the great tragedy, I feel, of the Anglification of Ireland, and when we lose our access, we lose access to the language. We lose much more than just. It's not just about speaking Irish for the sake of being rebellious. You lose a lot more than that, and yeah. So, and Boyne and Boann is another great example. So we think of the River Boyne as being the site of a very significant battle. And to be fair, and it wasn't just significant in terms of what happened in Ireland, it was significant in terms of European, um, the European dynasties. It meant a lot. King James and all that sort of stuff. It was very, excuse me, it was very significant, and it was always going to be remembered regardless. But the changing of the name Boann to Boyne. Now I don't know why Boann is. It's not a particularly difficult word to pronounce. In fact, it's not a difficult word to pronounce at all. But I suspect that it is to do with the cultural thing. So, regardless of whether the word was friendly to the Anglican tongue or not, it was destined to be changed in order to do the cultural separation. Do you get me? I would be very amazed if that wasn't the case. So we're going to tell you a little bit about Boann. There she is on screen. A very beautiful illustration by the fantastic Jim Fitzpatrick. If you don't know who Jim Fitzpatrick is, whose art as an artist, I would recommend highly that you go and check his stuff out. He rose to prominence doing work for Thin Lizzy and things like that back in the 70s and the 80s. But he has a deep connection. He did, his most famous painting is the Shades of Our poster, the famous one that you see on all the student walls. He did it. He's from Ireland. I think he's from the north. And but he does a lot of Irish mythology and Celtic stuff, and it's very, very beautiful. And you can see a great illustration there of Boann in all her glory, with holding a sword in one hand and a wolfhound on a lead on her other hand, and behind her, I assume, is not. It wouldn't be Navan. It might be Navan Fort. She would know from what's the one down in Meath. It's not. It wouldn't be Navan Fort. It would be. But anyway, so there's a ring fort mound behind her in a modern. Yeah, looks good. Looks fantastic. I love it. It's all great. I love all that stuff. But anyway, so here we go. I'm going to read you a bit about Boann. So before we get into it, you should. This is from an article from a website called Feminism and Religion. Okay. Now, one of the things I do love about Irish mythology, one of the many things I love about Irish mythology, and it seems that in the modernisation, the Industrial Revolution and the colonialisation of Ireland and the loss of Gaelic culture, we have these highfalutin ideas about feminism in the modern era. We're the first people to ever think about this. But the reality is, women and the feminine was much valued and much more valued than it became in the loss of these cultures. And across the world, it's not just Gaelic culture. You find it in all in a lot of native cultures, that the feminine and the female was much more valued, and that the certain attributes that we men don't have, that the female has, were cherished and respected and regarded and needed for the success of the clan, the success of the tribe, the success of the community. And I love that. So, if you know anything about mythology, we know that for example, one of my favourite characters from mythology is Boann, because of the connection with Loch Ness. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in this instance, Boann is associated with the flood myth. We have these flood myths, right? In Christianity, Noah, etc. So here is another flood myth, but Boann is much more significant than Laban, for example, in the sense that she was, well, you're about to find out. She was this. So Boann, we're going to read this article. You're going to love this. Boann, the Celtic goddess of inspiration and creativity, by Judith Shaw. No idea who that is. From this website, Feminism and Religion. Boann, the Celtic goddess of poetry, fertility, inspiration, knowledge, and creativity, was one of the Tuatha De Danann, also known as the people of Danu. She was associated with the 70-mile-long River Boyne in northeast Ireland and its source, the Well of Segas. Some bards say that long ago, when the world was young and the wild places were everywhere, Boann initiated that spring by walking counterclockwise around stones found there, causing the water from under the earth to spring forth with great strength and rush down to the sea. The pool formed by the spring was encircled by nine sacred hazelnut trees whose nuts could impart knowledge when eaten. There's a lot of that in Celtic mythology, the salmon of knowledge and all that, so like these holy foodstuffs that when you eat them, they impart you with wisdom. There you go, Jesus, there you go. The salmon of wisdom swam in the waters of the hidden pool from which the River Boyne flows. We know, so the salmon of knowledge, is the salmon of knowledge. That's the salmon of knowledge that Cuchulainn was supposed to capture, and he licked his fingers. He wasn't supposed to eat it. He captured it and he cooked it, and he wasn't supposed to eat it. And he licked his fingers and he got a bit of the knowledge, because only one person could get the knowledge. So the person that the knowledge was destined to, who he was sent, Cuchulainn was sent to learn from, never got the knowledge, and then Cuchulainn got it. But anyway, here we go. The other sources recount the creation of the River Boyne a little differently. This version, Boann goes to the source of all knowledge at the Well of Segas. While she was walking around it counterclockwise, the waters rose up and forcefully pursued her to the sea. She was turned into a salmon during this event, becoming the salmon of wisdom herself. And the goddess of the new River Boyne, she released the waters for all of the people, becoming the mother of many of the world's important rivers. She was also known as White Cow. Cows were sacred and associated with water in many ancient cultures. In the eyes of the ancients, both milk and water, the substances of life, flowed from the breast of the goddess. In addition to being associated with with rivers, some scholars connect Boann with the heavens. The Milky Way is also called the Way of the White Cow. Boann as White Cow thus either becomes or rules over the river of heaven, the Milky Way. Isn't that beautiful? Absolutely beautiful. Boann's husband changes from text to text. Some pair her with the water god Nacton, and others with the mortal Elamar, who guards the brew. Some scholars believe that Nacton and the Dagda were the same being, but accounts agree that she was the consort of the Dagda. That's the one I would tend to go with now. That's the one I've sort of grew up learning. The leader of the Tuatha De Danann, the Dagda was also called the Good God, not because he was specifically good, because he was good at everything. A prick. Sorry, Dagda, I'm only joking. The leader of the Tuatha De Danann, the god of earth, the All-Father, while her husband was away, she lay with the Dagda and conceived Angus. To conceal her pregnancy from her husband, she, or the Dagda by some accounts, caused time to stop, making 9 months appear as one day. And Angus, who became the god of youth and poetry by his birthright, was then given to his half-brother, Mitter. To raise Angus, later married Ciar Ibromith in the romantic tale in which they both turned into swans and flew away to live at the Brugh na Boyne. Boann lived at Brugh na Boyne, the ancient Gaelic name for the site known since the 14th century as Newgrange. Newgrange, that's the one that was behind her in the painting. She's been and has been carbon dated to around 3000 BC, making it 1000 years older than Stonehenge and 500 years older than the Egyptian pyramids. In Celtic mythology, Boyne was a site that offered great hospitality to spiritual travellers. It was a mysterious structure full of passageways and chambers, some of which housed guests and others reserved for only the she. The she is the fairies, the fairy folk. When visitors from the mundane world first arrived, the mundane world, in that class, the real world, our world, they were we're the Milesians, by the way, in Celtic mythology. The two-headed Anan, they would be the fairy folk, and the Milesians, that's us. That's where we come into the story. We'll talk about it some other time. Uh, when the visitors from the mundane world first arrived, they were greeted by three magical trees, which were always full of fruit, no matter the season. Some accounts say they were apple trees, others claim they were hazelnut trees. In addition to a constant supply of food from the trees, there was always a fire in the hearth, with food cooking for their guests. Here, visitors were able to nourish their bodies and souls, whilst the magic of the Boyne and Boann helped them access their own spiritual insight and creativity. I love that. Boann rules poetry and writing in general, flowing water, spiritual insight, fertility, knowledge, and creativity. Yet another husband is attributed to Boann, one which gives her credit for having birthed the three stains of music: lamentation, joy, and sleep. Boann coupled with or was married to Uithne. Yeah, the Dagda's harper. At the birth of their first son, she cried out in pain, and Uithne played healing music, or the music of lamentation. Upon the birth of their second son, Boann cried with joy, birthing the music of joy. The birth of the third son was so easy that Boann fell asleep, while Uithne played, thus birthing the music of sleep. And in the same way the flowing waters clears debris in all its path, Boann clears your mind of mental debris and negativity. She helps open your soul to receive divine inspiration. Call on Boann when seeking your own creative voice, an open door to spiritual insight and our connection to Source. Now, there we go. Isn't that better than a big old bottle? Isn't it? I love that. Actually, I love that. I listened to, and I tried to find it, and the reason I couldn't find it was because I couldn't remember the person's name. But I was listening to a lady. It will come to me at some point because I follow her on Instagram, and I couldn't remember her name, so I couldn't find her. But she, Laura, her name is Laura something. Just seeing it on the screen here. There's another Laura came up. Wasn't her. I will find this and I'll share this with you. But she's one of these modern feminine, spiritual, sort of Celtic, spiritually people that are coming through a lot at the minute, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. But she leans into Boann a lot, and she did this thing, and she recorded it as a poem. I can't remember at the time, but I remember listening to it, and I was nearly crying listening to it, and she just great expression of pain. Boan's giving birth to this is birthing pains. This is all this stuff. This was all related to, and this great sacrifice that she made. And she explained because she was rushed out into the sea and she was killed, and explained her body was broken on the rocks and all that. But it was beautiful. But you call her name and you ask her name for inspiration when you need it, and I need it all the time. And I was doing it for a while. It was nice. I felt it, even if it's only just nice for you to do it. It's worth doing. But I do like this stuff, and it means a lot to me, and I don't mind admitting that uh, evoking the ancient like that and our does stir something in me. It makes me feel more connected to place and to self in a way that very little else does. You know, I don't get it from religion and all that sort of stuff, but I do get it from this. I always have. I love it. So there we go. So there you go, Boyne or Bowen. So the next time you're going down to the airport and you cross over the River Boyne, give us a wee wave. Give her a wave and say thank you and evoke her. Ask her for guidance. Ask her for spiritual guidance and inspiration in whatever you're going to do. If you're an artist or a musician or whatever, peace and poetry and all these things, do it. I challenge you to do it. You should do it. I do it all the fucking time, so you should do it. I don't mind admitting to you that I do it. I love it. Not only do I not mind admitting it, I love it. So there we go. Bit of theme music, and we'll move into the next thing. So, what is the next thing? Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Boom. This about the music industry. This is an article from The Guardian. The working class can't afford it. The shocking truth about the money bands make on tour. Now, I may have some insights into this. Let's go through it. Because as you know, I play in a band. And as you know, as is my want, I go on tour. Just back off one, actually, not long ago. So let's do this. As Taylor Swift tops 1 billion in tour revenue, Jesus Christ almighty, already I'm feeling sick. Musicians playing smaller venues are facing pitiful fees and frequent losses. Should the state step in to save our live music scene? Now, there is a thing. The amount of money that the British government spends on the arts is shockingly low. And you contrast it with, at least in the South, it's multiples of. It's actually impressive. The South is very good for that. So, here we go. When you see a band playing to thousands of fans in a sun-drenched festival field, signing a record deal with a major label, or playing endlessly from the airwaves, it's easy to conjure an image of success that comes with some serious cash to boot, especially when Taylor Swift has broken 1 billion in revenue for her current Eras tour. But looks can be deceiving. I don't blame the public for seeing a band playing to 2,000 people and thinking they're minted, says artist manager Dan Potts. But the reality is quite different. I can assure you it is very, 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 very quite different than that. Post-COVID has been significant. There's been a significant focus on the grassroots music venues as they struggle to stay open. There's been less focus on the actual ability of artists to tour these venues. And that's fair enough. The venues have been closing. The last UK tour that we came off, there was 2 venues out of, I think we played 11 or 12 dates. 2 venues out of the 11 or 12. And were threatened with closure. In fact, are closing. There's a couple of things that might be happening to save one of them. So we don't know about that yet. But technically, at the time, they were closing. And these were 2 venues that have been booking the Bonnevilles for 10 years. So you're not talking about, recent startups. You're talking about established businesses. And by the way, they weren't closing through their own fault. They weren't closing because of failures on their own part. Terrible. So, uh, Dan Martin, Chief Executive Officer of Featured Artists Coalition, says, "We're in a cost of touring crisis. Pretty much every cost attached to touring, van hire, crew, travel, accommodation, food and drink has gone up, while fees and audiences have not. Playing live is becoming financially unsustainable for many artists," he says. Artists are seeing playing live as a loss leader now. That's if they can even afford to make it work in the first place. Well, if you're seeing playing live as a loss leader, you're fucked. You are fucked. Potts, who works at Red Light Management, home to everyone from Sabrina Carpenter to the Kaiser Chiefs and Sophia Curtesis, don't know who that is, feels like there is an industry equivalent of the Spider-Man theme in which they're all pointing to one another. Spider-Man meme. People who work at labels think bands make loads of money touring, while booking agents think they make loads of money in publishing and so on, he says. Everyone thinks that artists make loads of money from the other side of the industry that they are not involved in. Artists are the biggest employers in the industry. They pay for the tour manager, the session musicians, the agent, the manager, the crew, insurance, travel, accommodation, equipment, rehearsal space, production, everything. I don't think people know all this stuff. This is the stuff that the artist pays for and does. Greater transparency is needed, says Lily Fontaine, lead singer of Leeds based band, English teacher. On paper, the four-piece appear to have made it. They are signed with a major label. They have played on Later with Jules Holland, get healthy BBC Six radio airplay. Their debut album has received 5-star reviews. They are about to embark on their biggest tour to date, which includes an 800 capacity hometown show. The reality is that it's normal for all these achievements to coexist alongside being on universal credit. Living at home on the sofa, or sofa surfing, says Fontaine. During the making of their debut album, she and bandmate Lewis Whiting did the latter while being unable to afford rent. In their 4 years of existence, English Teacher have yet to turn a profit from touring. "We've never directly paid ourselves from a gig," says Whiting. A headline tour usually comes out with a deficit. The only thing that we ever make of any kind of profit is on festivals because the fees can be higher. They are higher, much higher. But any money left over just goes towards next outgoings. A successful show for the group in the past has been defined by whether they can flog enough merch to afford a supermarket food shop. So how do they survive? In the world of artists, we're in a lucky position, says Whiting. We try to pay ourselves £500 a month each from the band pot. However, they've been reliant on their advance for this, which is now gone. We're now in that stage where we're going to have to figure out where that £500 a month is going to come from, says Fontaine, because the gig fees won't be able to cover that. The band estimate that their 16-date tour in May will generate roughly £800 of profit. That's really bad. But, says Fontaine, realistically, I don't think there will be any profit because things will always go over budget. For many artists, fees aren't increasing in line with the costs. There's been no real incline at all, says Potts. For support slots, I don't think the fees have changed in the last 10 years or so that I've been managing. Whether that's £50 at the smaller end or £500 for some of the biggest shows, fees for headline shows can vary enormously for bands. Even on the same tour, playing a 200 capacity club in Newcastle may land you £600, while a 1500 cap in London may net you £3,000. And fewer people are coming to shows at the small to mid-size end of things. In our audience data, we see there is a gap in new audiences coming through post-pandemic, says the FSC's Martin. as well as a bit of a drop off in some of the older audiences returning to live shows. However, despite stagnant fees and shrinking audiences, touring activity in the UK is at a peak. Due to the costs of touring Europe, which can be thousands in taxes and Carnet alone, 74% fewer UK bands are now touring Europe post Brexit. It's much more difficult to tour in Europe, so there are more artists trying to perform domestically, says Martin. So you can see how that became a problem real quick. That creates a saturation problem. For this article, The Guardian has seen 12 tour budget sheets for various bands and artists, varying from up and comers to firmly established and successful acts. I feel the Bonnevilles are both of those. Isn't it? Weird. I feel we're both firmly established and up and coming at the same time. Anyway, all of whom regularly undertake headline tours across the UK in venues ranging from 150 to 2,500 capacity. Almost all of these result in losses. Understandably, most shared the balance sheets on the condition of anonymity. One four-piece indie band, whose last two albums went into the top 10 of the UK charts, reported a loss of £2,885 from a 6-day UK tour. The only tour that shows anything resembling a healthy profit was a 29-date tour for a solo artist that came away with £6,550. Not bad for a month's work, but as Martin points out, that's then his touring done for the next 6 months, so it's not enough money. Nearly done. Nubian Twist are a 9-piece Afro jazz outfit who have a loyal following and tens of millions of streams on Spotify. And there's a picture of them there on the screen. We pride ourselves on being able to put on a big show like your Fela Kutis or James Brown's. These epic spectacles, says band leader Tom XL. But it's getting more difficult without a shadow of a doubt. For an upcoming 8-show tour of Europe, they're predicting a loss of £4,931.28p. The only way they can justify doing it is because they get funding from the BPI Music Export Growth Scheme. I would have just pulled the plug if it wasn't for that. I've got a 2-year-old and I can't be away from home for that long, come back with a loss. Talk to me, brother. Even when the band get a more lucrative fees from festivals is still tough. They will be paid $5,000 for a festival performance this summer, but the total profit after the band's wages, as XL pays all his band members in full first, expenses and commissions are paid out, will be £277.60p. After 4 albums and 15 years of doing this, to still be having to gamble on whether I'm going to make anything whilst everyone else gets paid a guarantee amount is a struggle. Such thin margins leave little wiggle room as a space surf band Japanese Television, who headlined the first 100 to 300 capacity venues, found out when the booking agent reduced the 13-date and UK tour to 8 shows with the 5-day gap in the middle that will add further loss of around 1,200 to a tour that is already set to lose them 700. Records and t-shirts is basically what keep us going, says the band's Tim Jones. The only way this tour is working for us is because we have just put out our second album and we did about 60 pre-sales on vinyl, and that was basically enough to pay for the van. It's a hobby that just about pays for itself. I think that's shocking. It's terrible. Now, I don't know why I've got them on. I only need them on when I'm listening to the video. From my perspective, and the Bonnevilles' perspective, we make money. We've always made money. But one of the reasons that we've always made money is because we do everything ourselves. We drive the van. We do go on tour with Audrey to help us sell the merch, because we found that when we go to the merch, we sell far less merch than we would otherwise, because people talk to us, which is absolutely fair enough and completely understandable. Whereas with Audrey there, she can just stand there and bang out the merch. Her priority is to get it sold. So there's queue forms. We've watched people talk to us, and the queue of people standing with their wallets in their hands, literally disappearing, as some guy wants to talk to us about an album or about being in a band or whatever. Again, completely understandable. So that's why we bring Audrey with us on the road. And because we do everything ourselves, we don't have that expense. But we can only do that because there's two of us, and we're two big fucking burly boys, and we can handle it. Just about. I mean, just about. So we always have made money, and it's also one of the reasons why we would love. I personally would love to have a keyboard player in the band, someone like James Legg playing that style with us. We've done it with him on the road, and it's fantastic. But for two reasons: one, we don't want to affect the dynamic that Chris and I have. We're best buds, and all the rest of it. And if we get someone in that isn't just on our wavelength, it might fuck things up. But also financially, it's a financial. We make money doing what we're doing, but if you bring someone else in, it's gonna cut everything down. And we just, don't get me wrong, we do make money, but it's not that much. We do okay, but if we have to split it with somebody else, it's not enough. So I think you probably, like me, even though I know this, you'll find that shocking, I guess. Bands are not making a lot of money, and in times of struggle and trouble and strife that we're all in, times of rampant inflation and all these external factors, everything's getting more expensive. We know this because of goddamn capitalism. Yeah. Shocking. There we go. So let's get on to the next wee bit of theme. Get on to the next one. So this is the last article of the day. And it is about the Ulster final. So if you're not from Armagh and Donegal, you may not care about this, but I do, because this is gonna be great. So we're playing, as you know, the Deer's Head in Belfast on Saturday, and me and Chris and Shelley and Jeannie, we're going to go out and have a lovely meal and have some beers and have some crack. But then the next day, priority is getting back to Lurgan stat. So we'll go to the Woodville and watch the Ulster final, where Armagh is going to beat Donegal. I wonder what the bookies' odds, Ulster final odds. I'll search for it. Paddy Power, there we go. See who's the favourites. Four to 5, 11 to 8. So Armagh's 11 to 8. Donegal's 4 to 5 and 13 to 2 the draw. So that's Donegal are the favourites according to the bookie. Not by much. 11 to 8. Armagh 4 to 5. Or no. Aye. Just check odds checker, see what they are saying. Just get this for you now. Donegal Armagh 5 to 6. Yeah, similar. Draw 9 to 1. Jesus. Interesting. 5 to 6 Donegal. 13 to 8 Armagh. So Armagh is the favourite. Interesting. So, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm not going to talk to you about Gaelic football. Don't worry about it. You know what? I'm not that boring. I am not boring, but I'm not that boring for you guys. I want to talk to you about, as in keeping with the theme of today's podcast, which I don't know what it is. I'll figure it out when I'm posting it up. What is the place names? Told you need to get into the place names. You definitely need to have a wee think. think about even the street you live on or the estate you live in, you'll find that it's absolutely fascinating. So go to this website. It's called emeraldisle.ie. This is where this article comes from, and there's a wee quick article here. Armagh is a derivation of, again, like we've said in the past, earlier in this podcast, Boann, Boyne, Forkhill, Forkhill, Emmenmacha, Armagh, Armagh, Emmenmacha, right? So who's Emmenmacha? Here you go. Let's get into it. I'll read it from this site because it's a bit bigger. The Great Northern Fastness of Emmenmacha means Macha's twins or Macha's pair, and is a tale bound tightly with the local goddess Macha, after whom is also named Armagh, or as we say on my flag, which I will be wearing on Sunday, Ardwaha. It's pronounced Waha, Ardwaha. Okay. The ancient Greek philosopher Ptolemy drew a map around the world, upon which he marked a place called Isseminian in southern Ulster. Bet you didn't know that. Which may have come from the Proto-Celtic Isamon, meaning holy ground, and eventually translated to Emin. Another story tells that Waha was a great queen of the Ullid, the people of Ulster, and she drew plans for Emin Waha with her brooch, or neck brooch, or Emwin, before forcing the sons of her enemies to build it. Today it's called Navan Fort, an anglicisation of the Irish in on Emin. Navan Fort, Evan, on Evan, aye, on Evan, Navan Fort, on Evan, Navan Fort. The mighty King Conor MacNessa built his towering hall here, called Kirbrew. I'm gonna fucking mince this. The red branched or red poled edifice, and within, so we know about the red branch knights. That's what this comes from. And within, he began a school to train the fiercest fighters in Eru. His feared royal warriors were named the Red Branch Knights. It also was home to the legendary figures like Cuchulainn, Amergin the poet, Cahad the wise, Deirdre of the sorrows, and Nisha, her brave lover. Situated on a low hill today, there are several large earthen mounds and ring barrows at Emmenwaha, with marks suggesting the huge wooden roundhouse had been built on top of one. This had been filled with stones and a spoked wild This is about getting wonky. Some suggested that the mound artifacts that have been discovered in and under Emmenwaha indicate that it had been in continuous use for a very long time, perhaps as far back as Neolithic, and it is surrounded by a network of other forts and ritualistic locations. The Annals of the Four Masters says that the three colonists conquered the area in 331 AD, burning Emmenwaha and driving the Ulla eastward over the River Boann. Another tradition is that Emmenwaha was destroyed by the Nile of the Nine Hostages or his sons in the following century. More recent studies have, using the latest century technology, have found evidence of Iron Age and medieval buildings underground, which suggests that Emmenwaha was an incredibly important religious centre and place of paramount sacral cultural authority in the later prehistory. Isn't that fantastic? So there you go. So that's where Armagh gets its name from, Emmenwaha. There's a fantastic picture over there on the screen which you can't see. I'll just widen this out so you can. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Love that shit. So, yeah. So there we go. So that's where Armagh gets its name. What about Donegal? And before I leave this site, when I was perusing this website, I found there's a link called Map, and I've bookmarked it now for myself. I've never seen anything like this before, though I'm sure it's not the first. And it is a map of Irish myths and legends, and a map of Ireland. And there's a key to the right, and it tells you where you can find the mythological cycle, Ulster cycle, Fenian cycle, historical cycle, voyages, gods and monsters, folk and fairy, ghost stories, places, royal sites, etc., etc., etc. And you can click those on and off, so depending on what you want to see. I'm doing it on the screen there now, you can see the things. So I will be going to the Ulster cycle. And there they all are there. Isn't that great? The wee red hand. That's brilliant. So I'm going to be checking that out. So I urge you to go and check that out. emeraldisle.ie. So, Donegal. What does it mean? Donegal, Donegal, is a county of Ireland in the province of Ulster, the northwest, as we know. Named after the town Donegal, and also known as Tyrconnell. So the Gaelic name of Tyrconnell. So Donegal, Donegal, means Fort of the Foreigners. It has also been known as the third alternative name, Tyrconnell. For those of us that live in Ireland here, we'll be familiar with Tyrconnell. That's a common enough name that we would maybe have heard in songs or stories and things. And Tyrconnell means land of Connell, Tyr, land, right? The latter was its official name between 1922 and 1927. This is in reference to the Tuatha, or Gaelic kingdom of Tyrconnell, on which the county was based, and the earldom that succeeded it. County Donegal was once known was the home of the once mighty clan Dala, whose best known branch was the clan O'Donnell, better known in English as the O'Donnell dynasty. Until around 1600, the O'Donnells were one of Ireland's richest and most powerful native Irish ruling families. Within Ulster, only the O'Neill, known in English as the O'Neills, of Tyrone, were more powerful. The O'Donnells were Ulster's second most powerful clan or ruling family from the early 13th century. So there we go. Yeah. I'm not going to read more about Donegal because I don't want to. Because we're going to beat them. So there you go. So I thought I would give you that little insight into the Ulster final, which is kicking off at 4 o'clock on Sunday. It's Sunday coming. What is that? Sunday the 12th of May, year of our Lord 2024. Oh, jeez, the theme tune was on the whole time there, wasn't it? See, that's what happens whenever I don't have my cans on. Anyway, I hope that hasn't been ruined. I'll figure this out. If it has been ruined, you won't hear this. I'm going to cut it out. If it has been ruined, I'll cut it out. If it hasn't been ruined, you'll hear this waffling. So, there we go. So I think we're done. I did have some politicky stuff to talk to you. I think this is good. I think this is a good place to end. Yeah. So we'll put the theme back on. So there we go. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Please share. Like, share, subscribe. Head over to Patreon, Politics, Culture, and some other shit. If you want to do that, £1 a month. If you don't want to do that, you can throw a couple of quid into the bucket at Buy Me a Coffee. Same again, Politics, Culture, and some other shit. And this is available on YouTube, Twitter, all the places that you get them, all the podcast hosts, Spotify, Apple, etc. And yeah, and please share it with your friends. Let's build the audience up. I'm delighted how it's come back. It's come back quite well, so I'm really happy. So there we go. And this Friday, I'm going to be talking to my friend and People Before Profit comrade Paddy Kearns about what's going on with the lock. That's this Friday. And I'm still hoping to have our friend Dara Adelaide from Dublin to talk to us about and give us his insights about the current situation with the rise of the right wing and their associations with the British right wing. These great patriots are partnering up with Ulster's loyalists and British fascists. Unbelievable, hard to believe. But we'll discuss that. I'm waiting on it. He's actually campaigning for his own election at the minute. So if he gives me any of his time, I'll be honoured to tell you the truth. But so I'm still hoping out for that, and I'm also going to be Paddy Fox is going to be coming back to me, and we're going to be talking about the recent goings on in the courts between to do with the collusion between the British government and loyalist paramilitaries and the British state forces in the north of Ireland and all that. So those are all coming up, but we're definitely doing Paddy on the Loch Ness one. That's going to be Friday, so we're going to do that. So there we go. Thanks everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Have a good weekend, and Art Waha Abu.